Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours, where we've been answering your media and tech-related production questions every single day since March 25th, 2020. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader today. So, Alexander, what's our first question?
First question this morning is coming in from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. What's your process for cleaning mic foam windscreens? Any recommended detergents or cleaning agents?
And I'm going to start with Marty here. Marty?
Hi. I don't have any suggestions for specific cleaning agents, but a mild dish soap in warm water works well. Soak them thoroughly, give them a good little, squeegee, move it around, and let it air dry. Is probably the best thing.
I'm going to go to Courtney Gooden next. Courtney?
I concur. I'd prefer Dawn dishwashing liquid because it has the highest oil surfactants in there to remove any greasy oil or pollution that gets in there and get out those particles that get wedged in there. And it depends if you're talking about the wind weasel or the dead cat or the foam type windscreens. Wind weasels, I've put those into, laundry with a mild laundry detergent. If you're doing, put them with socks and underwear, and you can tumble dry them on the warm setting, but not the too hot because they're acrylic. Do not put the foam windscreens in the dishwasher. Don't do that. Do like Marty said.
I don't know why, but I've got an image of somebody who's a professional audio person with a lot of those dead cat windscreens and putting a whole load of them in a laundry, and just how awful that would be to look at halfway through the cycle.
Neighbors when you hang them up on the...
Ooh. I know. Ronnie Hofsoy, your thoughts?
Yeah, so talking about dead cats, I think everybody knows that Rode Company is based in Australia, and they don't use dead cats on their microphones. They use something called dead koalas. But that was a side fact.
There's rudeness in every culture. We apologize to any cat owner out there who we've made feel really bad here by just saying that.
Mickey? So to clean the grid, I would just use something like Listerine, so some mouthwash to clean it out and make it smell nice. It is working on the germs in a good way. And of course, if you are on a stage where there is live performance and alcohol served, you just use vodka. And vodka is, in a high-proof vodka, is also cleaning abilities. So that's the fast way to do that.
Are you really foofy if you use like Stoli to clean your It's really premium vodka stuff. Anyway, we're going to finish with Mickey. Mickey?
Yeah, windscreens, especially the foam windscreens, are expendables. For the ones with fur, like say your windjammers that you put on blimps, or even the softy type ones that you put on boom microphones, those you can wash. As mentioned earlier, you can put it in the wash, gentle cycle, and hang it out to dry. But for foam ones, I treat them as expendables. If it's just like a little, like lint or a little schmutz on the surface of the foam windscreen, then take a dry piece of cloth and wipe it off. But if it's like really gunked up, just get a new one. Foam ones are expendables for me.
That's J.J. McKenna in the chat said, fire is great for sterilization. That is true. I'm a big fan of Dr. Bonner's Castile soap. This stuff, I think this is the same bottle I've had for going on 25 years now. And I'm down to almost the end of it. But this stuff is great because if you have a something you need to clean next to your eye, it is so mild that it will not even bother eyes. I used to use it for my dogs and things like that. So I always have a bottle of that around. Mickey, you wanted to get back in?
Yeah, and just a slight side topic. For ones with fur, like your spacer, your softy type ones, make sure to maintain it. And part of that is brushing it off, making sure the individual fur strands are straight and aren't tangled up together with others. That makes sure that first off, you have less risk of losing those strands of fur there as things get jostled around and thrown in cases and all that, as well as it will say if you have a large clump of fur like all tangled up, it can start to affect the frequency response of the microphone. So make sure you maintain it, comb it regularly, especially after a wash.
Do you recommend a broad tooth comb or a close? Is there a particular type of comb?
When you buy these windscreens, they come with a comb.
Okay.
So use that.
Use whatever they recommend. That makes perfect sense. All right. I think we've talked enough about this one. Let's go to our next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington asks, what's this new mic from Lectrosonics?
Marty Atias is going to guide us through. Marty?
All right. So this new microphone from Lectrosonics seems to be a shotgun microphone in a classic blue color, anodized. It's about 8.5 inches long. So, and it seems to be the first of a joint venture between Rode and Lectrosonics, now that they're under one parent company. Looking at the specs, they look actually pretty good. Signal to noise ratio of 80 and a 10 dB equivalent noise, which is really low. It's a supercardioid pattern typical for a shotgun microphone. Max volume, sound pressure, 130 dB. Pretty standard, but the very low noise. I haven't, of course, have not heard it yet, but I expect that that it will sound pretty good. Yet another contender in the shotgun microphone field.
Courtney Gooden.
Did they say it's an interference tube microphone? It looks a bit like an interference tube microphone, and I'm surprised it's not wireless coming from Lectrosonics. So that's unusual too.
Yeah, it's got all those slots. That would kind of
and I've noticed that they usually with the interference tube microphone, the slots are always perpendicular to the axis of 90 degrees to the axis of the on mic sound. So, and they're usually vertical slots. So it's curious that these are at an angle. So I wonder if they change.
It does say line tube
pattern.
So yes,
line tube.
Line tube, yeah.
Mickey, your thoughts?
Yeah, interesting move by Lectrosonics, but I love Lectrosonics, but this sort of move has a parallel to what happened with Rycote after they were purchased, wherein they started making microphones and they started being very unfocused with what they're trying to do. So I hope this isn't a sign. But one thing to think about is just looking at the body of the S1. There's a lot of resemblance to the body of the Rode NTG3. So I wonder, and also looking at the specs, they're very, very close. So I wonder if this is a.
Are you concerned about a rebrand?
Slightly premium NTG3 in a blue body because Sheps cement blue. And also even them trying.
They put the cancellation slots at a 45-degree angle, which is interesting.
Yeah. Even the fact that they're marketing it as a microphone in a blue housing, sort of like, what are you trying to do here? Like, are you trying to be what you're not? So I hope that's
in lieu of a white paper where they explain the physics, if there is any. Let me ask a question to anybody from the audio side on the panel today. I've always thundered, short shotguns, 4, 5, 6 inches. I can see those being really useful on cameras because you don't want it to stick over the front end. But is there any direct correlation between the pattern directivity and the length of a shotgun? The really long ones are almost a foot long. Is that something that's in physics? So anybody want to attack that?
Yes. Yeah, it is. The longer the tube, the more sound you're getting. So shotgun microphones are not like cardioid. Cardioid microphones have a very short interference tube in the back. The openings in the back, there's only like 2 or 3, maybe 4, because they're really you want the same sound to come in the back as in the front. Ambient sound, which is what you want to reject. But with an interference tube microphone, you're getting sounds coming from different directions arriving at different times because there's more space behind the capsule. to get into the back. So that's why.
So I'm hearing like sound bouncing off walls, like balls on a pool table, and they're arriving at different micro times, and they're trying to get rid of some of it. Is that?
That's why you don't want to use a long shotgun microphone indoors in a reflective environment, because all of those reflections will get into the back of the mic, and they will confuse it because they're arriving at different times.
Okay.
Whereas outdoors, it's true ambient free field sound that a shotgun microphone will have a better opportunity to cancel out.
Okay, that does make sense. Courtney, you wanted to pop into this too?
Yeah, I was just going to – I've worked on a lot of Sennheiser shotguns, and the capsule is actually at the end of the noise canceling. They are not behind the capsule. They're in front of the capsule. And it works by a similar method is that the sound coming in from the side interferes with the sound coming in from the front and changes the directionality of it, because it cancels out part of the wave before it hits the capsule. So it's not coming in from behind the capsule in the case of at least the Sennheisers, I know, the 416 and the 816s, which have the long interference tubes in them. If you pull those apart, you'll notice that the active part of the microphone is only about this long, and the interference tube is, 21 inches or something like that. But so it's it does change. The longer the interference tube, the more narrow the pickup pattern for the high frequency. It also changes the frequency response outside the narrow band. So the high frequency drops off radically after about 12 degrees of input, which is about like that, and so that's why you have to very carefully, at least in the Sennheisers, very carefully aim the interference tube microphone at what you want. Otherwise, as you get a little off axis, the high frequency starts to drop off and it becomes a little more dull and lifeless. So the newer MKH-70s and MKH-60s had shorter interference tubes and eliminated a lot of that problem. But the older ones that have the long interference tube do. In fact, original shotgun microphones used to, if you ever saw them, used in press conferences at the White House in the 50s and 60s were about 5 or 6 feet long and pick up. And they had
a little tough for the camera bag.
A Gatling gun arrangement of tubes of different lengths for the different frequencies. So it looked like, a spiral of tubes built into it, and they put a covering over it, a single covering over it, so it looked more, normal.
Wow.
But when they would point that thing at you, it looked like a bazooka, and you dove for the chairs. Yeah.
Marty, you wanted to get back in and say something else.
Yeah, I remember some of those. The Electro Voice shotgun microphone, one of the earlier ones, that was really long. That was like 2-3 feet long and really thin barrel with a big hunkin' piece of metal at the back. Yeah. But I wanted to note that, and thank you, Courtney, for clarifying about the position of the capsule in a typical shotgun microphone. I wanted to note, however, that the Sanken shotgun microphones are fairly unique in that they have, some of them at least have multiple capsules inside the tube in different positions. And that it really gave them an advantage for directionality. And frequency balance. Something like a 416, for example, has low frequency. The low frequencies on a 416 are fairly omnidirectional, and it gets more directional as frequency increases. Where the Sanken CS3, for example, was able to maintain the directionality in the low frequencies, and then they have multiple models at different lengths as well.
David Brady's being funny in the chat. He said not to be confused with a series of tubes. No, that's the internet is a series of tubes, just to make sure that everybody's clear. Next question.
All right, this one's coming in from David Brady in New York City, New York. With ATEM and Fairlight Beta, claims were made to move audio in and out of hardware via USB. Has anyone figured this out?
Ronnie Hofsway is going to start us off here. Ronnie?
Yeah, I just plugged in the USB cable from my CQ12, which I have currently on my desk. And as you can see, I have signals coming into it, and I can do a lot of stuff. One thing that I'm a little bit disappointed of, thinking of how ZoomISO version 3 in beta does it regarding the physical interfaces, is that currently it seems that this mixer that are free and really advanced only supports one hardware device at a time. So I had to make some devices that are made up of aggregated devices done in my Mac to be able to have multiple going in. And I think this is a really cool move by Blackmagic. And thinking of this as a free software, which is that complete. Of course, we doesn't know anything about the sound quality and how it handles and the latencies yet. But the few measurements I've done so far looks really promising. But I still think there are some quirks to this that needs to be fixed before I will kind of be fully invested into this as a software mixer. But currently, the state it is really cool, and to just know that it's free is really tempting to start diving into this. And they also, of course, launched a few hardware surfaces to control this with real hardware, and especially the options for having it as a main mixer, and you can configure multiple other supported mixers that are made as failover mixers, so you can have kind of a cloud production thinking into this, but there is a lot of things yet to be tested out and verified by professionals.
Is a warning shot at, are those Claude kind of, the fact that code is so much easier to make now, is software products starting to lose their value and people are offering them for free? I'm just musing because that's what came in as I was listening to you, Ronnie. That was interesting. Marty, you wanted to get into this question too.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into the software more in the next question, but about the USB interface, this product is they're saying that they can support multiple interfaces at the same time. You'd be curious to see how they plan on doing that. As it is a software product, you've got to run it on a computer, and that means the computer will have to be capable of supporting multiple USB audio interfaces at the same time. It's a very interesting prospect, and we're going to have to play with it. We'll look at it at Infocom coming up in June. I think is the next show that hopefully they'll be there. Well, let's wait till the next question to get more into the software.
Fair enough. Mickey, you had something on this one?
Yeah, specifically with David's question, I think he's asking about getting audio that's embedded into the ATEM out into the Fairlight Live system. First is you would need to, and of course don't do this in a production system, do this in your lab. You'd need to update your ATEM to ATEM version 10.3 beta 1. This adds the ability, sorry, let me open that up again. This adds the ability for the ATEM to output digital audio through its USB connection. Once you have that, you go into Fairlight Live and select the ATEM as the I/O engine, or ATEM switchers as the I/O engine. That will allow you to pull in signals that are in the ATEM, the audio signals that are in the ATEM, bring it into Fairlight Live for mixing.
Great catch. That's an easily overlooked kind of, just doesn't work on the first time you try it. Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, I actually was going to say exactly what Mickey said. And the reason why was because I haven't been able to put it on my HD8 yet that I use, but I was working with somebody over in the Facebook group on that because they had some major problems when they put 10.3 onto the HD8 so they can use the Fairlight. And the big thing is if you update it, this is beta software, by the way, and firmware. So if you update it, you want to move everything off, do your update, and then bring it back. I think what it's going to do, and I got to confirm it once I do the update, is it's going to start adding an extra file into the Blackmagic switcher that will allow the porting over to Fairlight. I'm not 100% on that just yet, but from what we found out is if you have files on there and you're expecting that those files are magically going to start moving over to Fairlight when you do all the updates, that's not what happens. My guess is once you start recording from there, like I said, there'll be a new file somewhere that will actually tell what Fairlight needs to do and then work from there. So you won't be able to work backwards at all. But once again, I won't know until I put it on my system in the next couple days.
Ronnie, you wanted to get back in?
Yeah, just to make sure that people knows that Constellation HD is not supported by Fairlight at this point, even if you upgrade the hardware or do anything funny with it. So it won't work on Constellation HDs, only the 4K.
So make sure your hardware is compatible with the update. Hey, don't forget, we're driven by your questions. You can ask them and chat about them on our Mukana and our live Q&A system. So go to officehours.global/join if you are not already aware of this. Most of our viewers have been around a long time and are very aware, but that's officehours.global/join is kind of how you start getting involved in what we do here. Next question.
All right, this is coming from the QR code from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. Thoughts about the newly released Fairlight software audio mixer from Blackmagic Design. Does this support AutoMix for live venue and Zoom presenter interaction?
I'm going to start with Jeff Cohen here. Jeff?
Yeah, so as we started to touch on, I mean, this is, really impressive. I'm showing here on the screen the page for Fairlight Live. Again, supposed to be able to take in thousands of channels, handle spatial. If you're talking about, now the funny thing, by the way, is they say how it scales from, really small, simple audio podcasts. I mean, while that is a factual statement, I'm not sure if the amateur podcaster would find this simple to start with. But yes, you can start off running this on a laptop and kind of grow from there and add on hardware consoles. Now, as far as the auto mixing, I mean, if you're talking about like a Dugan auto mixer, I haven't seen anything specifically about that, although they have some features in already DaVinci Resolve, like dialogue levelers and some things like that. So I would be surprised if you can't put that on there. One of the things they do talk about is interesting is you can have it set, of course, if you're working with an ATEM to automatically switch audio based on your camera switching. So if you want that, you can do that. So it follows that. But it is incredibly sophisticated, what you can configure. They have an interesting on-air mode, which kind of locks it down, so you're not making a lot of accidental changes. There's remote access. There's team production access to control this, so it's tremendously sophisticated, and I'm looking forward to digging in with the rest of the folks.
Marty.
Yeah, so this does look pretty incredible, from what they're saying on the website. And looks like you can build your own output busing to do multiple things. It has matrix outputs, and is capable of pretty much as many channels as you care to have. A lot of questions, though. I mean, considering that it has that many, or is capable of handling that many channels. Now, it's a live mixer, which does have apparently recording capabilities as well, but as a live mixer. And from the previous channel, we're talking about, getting in and out of Blackmagic hardware via USB, and the capability for supporting multiple interfaces. So how do you get that many channels into Blackmagic hardware in order to bring it out to the computer for live mixing? How do you do multiple interfaces, and what are those interfaces? I don't see anything in here about whether it supports Dante or NDI audio. So there are a lot of questions, but in terms of the capabilities of the mixer, pretty incredible. It does lots of things. It can support multiple mixer operators. So you can have front of house, you can have monitor, you can have broadcast, all accessing the same the same channels with different bus outputs or matrices. Very, very flexible. Of course, it's kind of beta. I would consider this beta right now. It's available for download, and it's available for both Windows and Mac, which is interesting. And so we're going to have to play with it and see where it goes from here. It seems like they are competing with Harrison and competing with several other software mixer manufacturers. So it's going to be an interesting race.
Let's see, Mickey McAchore.
So yeah, just to touch on what Marty was saying earlier, in terms of I/O, we have several selections for I/O engines. You can have on the Windows side ASIO audio interfaces, on Mac OS Core Audio, standards compliant audio interfaces as a source. You can also have ATEM switchers that are supported as a source. So that means any analog I/O coming into that switcher, any of the SDI audio sources coming into that switcher. If the switcher has MADI I/O, you can take that in as well. And another selection would be ST2110-30. That would require, of course, having the full 2110 infrastructure and having sources that are able to transmit 2110-30 essences so that the audio mixer can pick that up. But yeah, those are your options for I/O. In the Blackmagic realm, they have a whole bunch of these microphone, like remote preamps that run on ST2110. Of course, they're Blackmagic design, so they sound like Blackmagic design products. What you would expect from the audio circuitry, analog audio circuitry that they have. Going back though to Andy's question, there is supposedly going to be an automix engine. Again, it's a 1.0 from Blackmagic design, so use your ears. Don't just turn it on. Use your ears, listen to it, because not all automix engines are the same. And also, it's good to talk about what automix does. Automix is not actually balancing between levels for you. They're just fading down sources that aren't in the primary source at any given point in time. They're not balancing between the sources. They're just giving you a bit more signal to noise ratio. Just wanted to touch on that there. In terms of mixing for live and venue, I'm curious to know what the latencies would be like with the different I/O engines that you can select. All the different USB audio interface, or Core Audio or ASIO audio interfaces you can plug in. What the different latencies would be there. As well, with the ATEM, I saw a screenshot where you're looking anywhere from 50 to 100 milliseconds of latency when you're pulling in from an ATEM. So obviously that you can't use that for front of house sound, because that's unbearable. And as well as with what do you call this? If you're feeding IFB monitors or even monitors for musicians, that would be unbearable if you're going in. Like even the low single digit milliseconds starts to get very distracting. But once you go above once you hit 2 digits of in terms of milliseconds of latency, it's this. I believe they're designing this and marketing this as a broadcast mixing solution, not something to mix live front of house or monitors. So there's a lot of testing that needs to be done. There's a lot of very, very promising things both on the Fairlight Live side, as well as the rest of the changes in Blackmagic Design's implementation of ST2110, as well as the underlying ST2022 protocols that support the operations of 2110. There's a lot of promising stuff there. There's also a lot of like, oh, you're so close, but yet why didn't you just give it to us? Like, things like how they implemented 2022-7. It's like just a little 2 more steps and you'd be at the standard implementation. Like, why are you holding things back? But I guess they want to keep people in their ecosystem, so they're not complying to standards 100%. But yeah, at the end of the day, If everything they say works, amazing. For the price of free, amazing. But again, it's Blackmagic design, so don't until I see things working how they market it to work, I'm not going to hold my breath.
Jeffrey Powers.
I agree on there. When it comes to operating systems, it can run on Sequoia, it can run on Tahoe and Windows 11. I'm not sure if it does an Intel Mac, but it definitely can do a M1 Mac. In fact, they had an M4, a really badly photoshopped M4, I think, in the image there. So you can definitely run it from there. I was looking at their smallest version, their Audio Panel 10, and the reason why is what I see this could be a game changer for is the hotels, especially because things like QSC, the Touch Mix series, they are now discontinued. Allen and Heath has that 18 QT series, which these are mixers that basically get set in the corner of a hotel conference center. They're configured once and then they're completely forgotten until they need to reset it up for something else. And I'm wondering if this is going to be going in that same line. Of course, they'll have cameras in there. They'll probably have cameras posted so somebody can run them, and then they'll have consoles where somebody can control it, but if they need to walk away, they can do so. And I'm also wondering, because these consoles, like the 10 that I'm looking at right now, looks like laptop size. So it's not going to take up much space in a conference, or going into like Vegas, if they're doing a panel or something like that, somebody can come in, plug this thing in to the Ethernet, sit down and control whatever audio needs to be controlled, and then close it up and then walk off with the unit from there. So that's what I'm expecting a lot of these units to be able to do. And then, of course, you have things like House of Worship. You have things like schools where they need a little bit more portability to that. So I'm seeing all of that from there. So I think somebody talked about Dante. I don't think I'll ever have Dante on these units, and just like there'll never be NDI on Blackmagic devices. I'd be surprised if it showed up. But I think that this is something that's just going to completely replace, because they're also talking about podcasters using that. They're also talking about people like you and me, and then people that are just getting into it, to get into the infrastructure. And of course, software, they've always had that model. If they give you the free software, you end up getting into the ecosystem anyway.
Love these long discussions, but we've got 3 more people who wanted to weigh in on this, and I'm going to go ahead and let them. But just remember, new piece of equipment, we've got a lot more questions, and I want to try to get to everybody we can. So let's go to Ronnie Hofsoy next. Ronnie?
Yeah, just quick. I have huge problems getting it to connect to anything more than one engine at a time. So I can choose between the different engines, but I'm not able to use multiple engines at the same time. So I think that is a really big no-no for us. I need to stay away from aggregating audio devices. So that's a no-no for us at least.
Marty, you want to get back in?
Yeah, so I like Jeffrey's use case, analysis. There could be many, many different use cases. Events, multi-room events are possible. The question is really going to be like, what is the microphone I/O? What are you going to plug into that brings it, brings all of those input channels and then output channels for speakers and monitors back to the room? The ability to control multiple rooms from a central location is really interesting. But I did want to point out that they have, along with the product, they're bringing in hardware interfaces. There are 3 different size interfaces with 10, 20, and 40 faders. I think this is a really interesting development because having a real comprehensive control surface for these is going to be very, very useful for live mixing, whether, for any kind of live mixing. And so more to be seen.
Yeah, a lot of hardware manufacturing expertise in Blackmagic. They've been doing this for a while now. Courtney, you want to wrap things up for us real quick?
Yeah, I was just going to point out that Jeffrey suggested using this new 2110. the audio panel 10. I wanted to point out that that's 2110 interface, although it's nice and cheap, $24.95 as a small stage mixer. I might point out that when you look at the I/O, it's designed for 2110 I/O over 10 gigabit Ethernet. It does have some line outs, but there's no mic ins, no mic preamps, and there's a talkback mic plug-in. But you're going to have some kind of stage box that supports 2110 to talk to this thing, to control it, if you're going to control the mic pre's over a distance, or some other method of interface to your computer, which you can then use the USB interface to control the I/O coming into a laptop or something. But if you're going to use it as a standalone, you're going to need a 2110 stage box of something.
Since this is audio, I'm going to override myself and bring Mickey in. Mickey, final word.
Yeah, just to add, Blackmagic does have a bunch of these microphone converters with preamps in it. Can control it remotely. They have MADI in and out, so you can stack multiple of them, as shown in this example here, all the way up to a full MADI 64 channels, 48 kilohertz setup, so that you can bring all your sources in. Of course, this is not what you a workflow that you would typically want to have in a broadcast situation, and certainly not in a live situation. But it's a solution they have. I assume they would put out more options in terms of I/O at some point. But again, Blackmagic design, don't expect much.
Next question.
This one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael. Where do you see use cases for Fairlight Live? Do you see it being useful in the House of Worship community? I've heard that many churches use DAWs to mix live streams. And
I'm turning around and going right back to Alexander.
Yeah, that's certainly one place I could see it being used for, absolutely, to mix a live stream. In fact, as soon as I saw the announcement of this, I thought this would be a great tool to have to even add something like this to our own show for extra hours. A lot of production switchers and production software-based video production tools don't necessarily always have the best audio tools. And, I wouldn't want to run it on the same computer, but I think if we had, say, a dedicated Mac Mini to it, we could use Dante Virtual Sound Card, pipe the audio out of Mimo Live as dedicated audio channels into Fairlight, process it there with all the tools that it has there. In fact, because you can run VST plugins, I can run some of my favorite waves, compression, and other processing plugins on there. Add bus compression, for example. Use the loudness meter to make sure that I've got the overall program loudness at the correct target for what I want it to be for distribution to YouTube, and then just have that stereo mix go out over Dante back into Mimo Live. So there's all sorts of use cases for this.
Ronnie Hossoy.
Yeah, I have to refer back to Mickey on the latency thing. I think it's perfect for everything that is not in room. So if you're doing a physical thing, going to speakers or monitors on stage or IEMs or similar, I would prefer to have that in the hardware console, and then just out of that hardware console, pipe the audio into this software mixer, and then send it out wherever we would need it. If that is a live stream, or maybe a Zoom room or two, or maybe some intercom that is out in the cloud, I think that is a really, really good usage scenario. And of course, mixing audio coming from the ATEM and streaming things from that, and controlling the audio per channel, etc., and making all these mix minuses that we typically do in a live stream situation where we have remote guests, etc. I think this is a good product. But for replacing a big, expensive physical hardware with almost no latency in it, I don't see it will take that position.
Jeff Cohen.
I think it is also potentially interesting on a smaller scale. They do mention podcasters, video podcasters. So as a software mixer, if it can be configured in a reasonably simple to use way, a powerful software mixer, as they mentioned, that can do all the mix minus and everything else, especially if you have guests. Also the fact that it has remote control, I assume presumably over Blackmagic Cloud, but haven't dug into it. That's also interesting, where you can have an engineer configure templates and presets and then also control the recording, and the fact that it can be used to record now opens you up to having simple hardware but still sophisticated mixing and routing. So I think that's potentially interesting.
Mickey McAchore.
Yeah, I can certainly see how more cost-conscious productions, like say with most houses of worships, could benefit from this. Although some houses of worships here like have good funding, but with I can see how they can start to eat up again if Fairlight Live works, which is a big question mark for myself. If Fairlight Live works and it's reliable, stable, I can see how it can start to eat into the market of the Waves folks, the Waves LV1 platform, which is also software based. I can also see how if they really optimize its performance and bring the latencies really low, it could also be used for front of house mixing, especially if it's a larger room. If your main PA hangs are 40 feet away from your audience at the closest point, then what's an additional 4 milliseconds of latency if they can get it that low. So it can also be useful in that area.
So I haven't done a regular show in a while, and I'm behind, which is we've got 11 more questions, and we've only got 20 more minutes, so I'm going to try to tighten things up and move a little quicker. I do want to say, though, that tomorrow night, for those of you who don't know our regular schedule, The Rundown, David Paskin's show is tomorrow night, 6 p.m., takes a deep dive into the why behind the latest tech. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's a great show. You should take a look at it. And we're now going to roll through these as quick as we can. Next question.
This one is from Zach Stelsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Using ZoomISO V2, Loopback, and DVS, can I send individual Zoom participants' audio to individual channels on an X32 with a Dante card?
And Alexander Knight's going to start us off. Alexander?
You can. I just pulled up the user guide for V2. Of course, version 3 is now in beta. But V2, you can see in the screenshot here from the user guide, they even show you here. There's an audio device selected, Dante virtual sound card. They've got 16 outputs coming out of Zoom, going into Dante Virtual Sound Card. So there's your answer.
Mickey McAchore.
Yeah, you don't even need Loopback at all when you have DVS installed and select DVS as an output device within ZoomISO's Advanced Audio Output tab. You will see every single output there, and you can assign any of your participants to any of those output channels on Dante Virtual Sound Card.
Next question.
This one is coming from the QR code. Tim Home in San Lorenzo, California asks, do you have contingency plans in place for a production when someone calls off work? What do you do if you're shorthanded?
Oh, crew issues. Ronnie Hossoy, what do you do?
Yeah, so make your workplace as fun as possible to never have people call in sick. And of course, jokes aside, never utilize your personnel 100%. Keep them at a steady 60-65% maximum, so that you are able to save the production even if you have one or even more people call in sick. So of course, then you have the option of having partners, which is always a good idea. You never do this alone or just with your own companies without having someone that can backstop and help you out if the crisis arises. And of course, we saw this many times during COVID. We got some training during those days, and having people that are available and that they are knowledgeable and just plan for a catastrophe and have them on hand so that and treat them well as well. Keep them handy and keep them happy and invite them to parties, etc. If you have parties at your company, etc. So it's many ways to do this.
Pro tip: set up a wedding-style chocolate fountain. Your crew will show up on time every time. Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, it's like Ronnie said, if during COVID was a good learning process because there were testing situations that were mandatory, that you had to be tested when you got to the stage, and if you showed up positive, they wouldn't let you in. So production always had to have a deep list of backups that they could go to on a moment's notice, and especially for single-person department heads, where a crew position that is only one person deep. So it might be good to have an A2 or something to back you up who could take over, could step into the reins. So you want to hire some multi-talented individuals that are, like a cameraman that's done audio a lot. So in a pinch, they can use that person to set up the audio if the audio mixer ends up being, hurt in a traffic accident or comes down with some, berry or something that day before the shoot, someone who can step in at the last minute. If you're the person who is calling in sick, also maintain a list of people that you know and trust that you are willing to step in for you if you suddenly find yourself ill on the morning of the shoot, that you can call at the last minute and ask them to substitute for you. And usually a lot of producers, depend on the department heads to find replacements for them at the last minute if there's someone who calls in sick.
The 1950s called and they want their disease back. Jeff Cohen.
So let's be very clear on this point, because we're talking a little bit in generalities, keep people, not maxed out, 60%, all that stuff. Be very clear. You need to cross-train. You never want any one person mission critical where any one task or function cannot happen without that one person. As a manager, you're in a really bad spot for a variety of reasons, including if they just don't show up, they're sick, they get hit by a bus, they rob a bank. I mean, you have to be prepared that any function or task can be done by one or more people, but very specifically, all the tasks, you need to get down to the nitty-gritty and make sure that you're cross-training folks, whether they're your team, other people, but down to the exact functions, not in generalities. That's true for any industry.
Mickey McAchore.
Yeah, 100% support what Ronnie said about not assigning responsibilities to a single person to the point that they're running at 100%. If you have a crew of, say, talking about audio, you have a crew of 4, 5, 6, and everyone's running at just like 50% capacity. One person dropping out means the load of that, the responsibilities of that one person can be spread across others. I would also say that work with people who would not just drop a fire for you to put out. Work with people who would call in sick and say, "Don't worry, I already called so and so. They're on the way there," and that this person called the person that you, as the the department head, would trust. Work with those kind of people so that there's no fire to put out. It's just maybe the person might be 15 minutes late, and that's it. If you build a core group of people that you can trust like that, then you're in a better spot than just being short of one person.
Next question.
This one's coming in from the QR code. Andy Kokendorfer from VR Florida asks, is there a way to monitor 5 active Zoom meetings at once? I'm looking for a multi-meeting admin dashboard. Thank you.
Mickey, do you have a suggestion for him?
Yeah, Zoom themselves have this. If you're looking for just like, say, statistics, if you have a business account, a corporate account, an education account, and I believe even a government account, you will be given access to a dashboard of all your users and all the active meetings within your account. You can see how if people are having connectivity issues, you can see how much CPU usage they're using, if they're on wired or wireless connection, what audio interface they're using, what camera they're using, what they're using to listen to the meeting. The Zoom dashboard is quite comprehensive if all you need is statistics. If you're asking about being able to be in multiple meetings at the same time, again, if you have a business account or higher, you can join multiple meetings at the same time with a single computer. apart from that, there are workarounds wherein you have you duplicate the Zoom client and sign into multiple meetings at the same time from the computer with those duplicate Zoom clients, or easy peasy if you have the computers, log into each meeting with individual computers.
Let's go on to our next question.
This question's coming in from Chuck Swan in Bristol, Wisconsin. Trying to split an HDMI feed from a MacBook via OREI splitter to a TV and Epson projector. Both work if direct connected, but the projector gives a black screen via the splitter. Tried different ports on splitter, ideas other than Decimators and SDI.
And Alexander Knight's going to start us off here.
To me, this sounds like the classic HDCP issue, the high digital bandwidth copy protection issue, which will happen. They do make splitters that can bypass HDCP 2.3 or whatever the latest copy protection standard is. So have a look for those on Amazon. They do exist.
Mickey McAchore.
Sorry, I was looking for my because I have a bunch of OREI splitters. They come with a little manual, and in the manual it shows you the different settings for the dip switches, and those dip switches control how the EDID handshake is handled. You can either forward the EDID handshake with a specific one of your outputs, say output 1, 2, 3, or 4, or you can set it to some generic output or some generic format like 1080, 30, UHD 30, UHD 6K, 60 frames per second. Make sure that the EDID is set to something that your projector can support. I assume you are connecting a MacBook, so there's a variety of formats a MacBook can output. So I think the issue is happening because the projector is receiving some format that it doesn't support. So make sure the EDID is set appropriately for that.
Courtney, can you real quick?
Yeah, I concur with both suggestions. It could be HDCP, in which case you can find like this one that removes HDCP bypass for $29. It's just a 1 to 2 splitter. You can find those on Amazon. The other problem is, and usually if it's a resolution or frequency frame rate problem on the projector, it will tell you can't handle our wrong input format. It'll sometimes put up that little flag on the screen. It'll say wrong input format. And so that's where you got to check your EDID, like Mickey said, and make sure that your computer, the MacBook especially, is notorious for outputting resolutions like 1920 by 1200. That the projectors may not support directly. So you may have to go through a decimator to get it to the right image format is one way to solve that problem, or to lock the EDID with something that will read the EDID and set the MacBook to the correct resolution for the projector.
Next question.
All right, this one's coming in from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What are good field recorder recommendations to replace the mic handle for the Sony FX-30? What workflow adjustments or considerations with this type of substitution?
Ronnie, can you help him out?
Yeah, we used MixPre 3 or MixPre 6, and the workflow is we take the HDMI output and put it into the MixPre, and then we have time synchronization information also on the recording, and you can arm the microphones you would like to have armed. You can even have some kind of automix inside it, and you can have noise assist running. And you can actually just pre-make the settings and just turn it on. Be aware it uses a lot of battery, or bring a USB power bank to power it, or more professional power solution. So you said good. I would say that the MixPre is kind of between good and very good.
Next question.
Norm Clare in Waterloo, Ontario is asking, if you're an in-ear monitor fan, what does the panel think of Wisycom's new MPR60 multi-channel IEM receiver that's capable of receiving up to 3 mono tracks using a single frequency and carrier?
So it's doing some kind of multiplexing there. Mickey, have you read into this?
So yeah, with it, I'm not entirely sure what the use case would be, because the times that we have the term is called party dialing. The times that we have party dialed IFB receivers is for when you have multiple mixers and you want people to be able to hop from mixer to mixer and listen to what that mixer is outputting. If it's a single carrier, you would not be able to do that because it would all have to come from the same source. It's an interesting feature set. I don't know how useful it would be. I'd be curious to know where they see this to be useful. But Wisycom makes really good products. I'm starting to invest in a good number of channels of Wisycom stuff in addition to our sound devices RF. This specific feature, I'd like to know where people would use it.
Let's go to our next question.
This one is coming in from Zach Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I digitized old media to .mp4 files, and I have requests to digitize 8mm. Does anyone have advice or warnings for this? I currently do a VHS-C, cassette tapes, and vinyl.
The best advice is be very careful with this. This old media is now getting very old, and anything that's on Mylar back tape is probably so old that you're going to get a lot of flaking. Whoever does it, if they're not really skilled at this, you have one shot to get stuff off of there, and after that, there's a good chance you'll actually scrape the oxide off of these old tapes, and you'll have trouble. Just be careful. Mickey, you want to pop in there, and Marty?
Yeah, specifically like when because MP4 files are, well, first off, MP4 is a container. It doesn't really explain how you're encoding the video, but typically MP4 containers would store highly compressed video in it. So I would highly advise against that, especially if you're spending money to digitize this media. Like put it into a nice codec that can contain a lot of information, and you're not just throwing away bits as you compress it to H.264, H.265 into an MP4 container. Put it in. I don't know if it makes sense for you storage-wise or budget-wise to store it in uncompressed 12-bit. If not, you can go down to ProRes or DNX HD or DNX HR. But it seems like a complete waste to digitize this and archive into an MP4 file.
Marty.
So it actually appears that we're talking about film scanning rather than magnetic media. So we're talking about 8mm film. So this is a film scanner that Zach gave us the link to that he's considering buying. And so as a film scanner, I think you still need to be careful because depending on how fragile the film is, what condition the film is, you want to be really careful about handling it. If the film is in good physical condition, then this should do the job. I mean, scanning 8mm film is kind of rare. For a $400 investment for this device, you can probably recover that. Hopefully recover that from the one job, because I don't know how many other jobs you'll get for it. But this device creates a 1080 output at 20 frames, and it has a 9-inch reel capability, so that should cover most home movies, film reels.
Let's move along here because I want to get to this. I'm going to let Jeffrey have a few minutes here. The next question's about NAB, and that's coming up right around the corner. So next question.
Jeffrey Powers in Madison, Wisconsin asked, BorisFX by SoundForge, Vegas Pro, and Acid Pro. Discuss.
Yeah, what I was getting into is we're getting a lot of the pre-announcements for NAB, which happens very soon here. So, Jeffrey, what do you know?
Yeah, this is kind of big for me because, of course, all this software originated in Madison, Wisconsin, and of course, Sony bought it, and then Magix bought it. Magix became insolvent 2 years ago, and now Boris is taking over all this software, which I think is a great move. It's still got Madison roots in it, which is awesome. They had a they had a video conference about it yesterday. They were talking about where the future of it was going. It's still not going to be Mac Mac-based by any means. And they did have some software that was Mac-based, but I'm not sure if that's getting updated. They're going to subscription models, but they still will. You still honor the legacy software if you bought the perpetual license for there. But I think this is a great advancement for this type of software, and I know there's a few people in the community that still use the Vegas and use Acid for whatever their audio or their video. So I can't wait. I'm going to try and stop. I only got a day and a half at NAB myself, so I'm going to try and stop at Boris's booth and try and find out a little bit more about their direction.
Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all for being here. Thanks again to our amazing panelists. This is the one place on the interwebs where you can come every single day and get access to amazing amounts of brain power and experience in the industry. So without our panelists, none of this takes place. So thank you so much, everybody on the panel. To our producers, those of you who asked questions and generated the discussion and voted on those questions to tell us what was most important to you, thank you for doing this. And to our amazing back-end crew, without whom none of this would be possible. We've been doing it for way over 2,000 days in a row, and we haven't missed one yet. The stats today, for those of you, I'm not actually seeing, oh, there they are. If you had gone around the world to get these answers to these questions, you would have traveled 15,000 miles. That's 24,000 kilometers, 116 million bananas for scale. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
And by the way, Mickey, you want multiple outputs for your inner monitors so that you can feed talkback to your boom persons over a private channel, and client feeds that don't hear that stuff, and director's feed that can have a different mix. So there's
that IFB system uses wideband, so it like the Spectera system apparently.
Uh-huh.
So they chop up the bandwidth totally and give it to individual channels?
It's a multiplexed system. Time multiplexed, yeah. So kind of like Dante over wireless.
Mm-hmm. Or kind of like how
yeah, but I wouldn't want I wouldn't want clients to be able to click in to my private line with my boom ops.
Well, there's probably
nobody ever talks about the clients.
One channel set, and you can't change it remotely, or you can change it remotely. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, thank you all. I haven't done the main show in such a long time that it was like a little weird.